I want to share my experience of how I escaped the Matrix. And I believe it was when I was 20, I think is when I actually left. I finally dropped out of university. I quit all my classes. And I also simultaneously quit my 9 to 5 job at the bank, which I was making pretty good money from. And I kind of want to go through that process and some of the skills I learned, some of the things I think that I credit a lot of my success to this day, and other things I wish I had known to allow me to escape the Matrix faster and finally live a life filled with purpose and freedom and fulfillment, right? And be doing something, right? Like where I'm actually making an impact on people, where I'm changing lives, where I'm trying to actively make other people's lives around me better so they can live the life that they always wanted, right? So they can go travel, like to the places in the past year I've traveled to, like Mexico, Brazil, Spain, the Netherlands, different places in Canada, you name it, right? It's been incredible, and all from the fact that I've been able to just acquire a few skill sets that have allowed me to do these things. And so I want to share a bit of my story so you can hopefully, at the bare minimum, be inspired by what I've done, because I can promise you, if I can do it, so can you. And everyone says this, like, oh, if I can do it, so can you. But I genuinely do believe that. I am not some out of worldly motherfucker. I'm an immigrant. Okay, English isn't even my first language. I got bullied my whole life. I never saw eye to eye with anybody. Always, had these different kind of vibes. And so on many levels, I'm the same in a lot of regards as a lot of these other people that have a lot of victim mindset towards some of the things that I have, right? They're like, oh, well, blah, 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 you're different, right? And we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to share a bit of this so that you guys can be inspired, to say the least. Anyways, let's give me a bit of raw talk, right? I don't filter nothing. I'm a transparent motherfucker, if you will. So listen up. Anyways, so here's the deal. Back in, I want to say 2021. I mean, if we go back even way back when I was a young kid, I never saw eye to eye with anybody. I always was different. Even from, I think it was grade 6, I wanted to drop out, but obviously my parents said, no, Stefan, you're not. And, I was a little kid. What was I going to do? Run away from home? Like, no. But I never saw eye to eye with anybody. My teachers, my friends, even some people I worked with, even my parents. I never meshed, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I know now, but at the time I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I didn't have many friends. I didn't know why I never fit in. I just never really understood. I always thought like what is wrong with me? Only to know now I'm so thankful for the mindset that I do have. But I always had such a different outlook on life than most people. I didn't do a lot of the things that those people did. I never drank. I never did drugs. I never partied. Like I never did any of the things that normal society, normal young kids do, because I never saw myself like that. And I could pull you forward, and I always thought, like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like why am I not like these guys? And I try to fit in, but it just never felt right. And so fast forward many years, right? I tried different businesses. I tried, I would babysit. I even snow shoveled, made some money doing that as a little kid. I'd walk around and be like, hey, can I shovel my driveway? And people were like, sure. How much do you charge? I go, whatever you want. And I actually made a good bit of money doing that when it would snow in my town. I went around. I even did like recycling, or like what is it called, like bottles and stuff. I'd go collect bottles, and I'd go and go sort them out at the bottle depot, and I make a bit of money doing that. I sold stuff on eBay, on Grailed. For those of you who know Grailed and like the hype beast space, I did that stuff. Like I tried every little thing, right? Like I if you name it, I probably tried it at one point. I refed. I picked up little jobs, doing construction and stuff, like building houses here and there, just trying to make some extra cash on the side. And nothing ever really stuck. Like I never really progressed until I picked up a camera for the first time. Now, granted, my dad had been a photographer, videographer most of his life, and so I picked one up, kind of in his footsteps to want to do what he did. And I started to, initially take photos, and then I started getting to YouTube. If you scroll down my channel really far, you'll notice I've been on YouTube for a while. And so I started to make YouTube videos here and there, yada, yada, yada. And next thing you know, I was in some, media programs at school, and I kind of got known around town as the video guy. And I started to make a bit of money here and there, and it was kind of one-off just a little bit, but it was my first taste of freedom, of being able to work on my own timeline and get paid for just my own work, right, for things that I'm doing, for something I actually really liked at the time. And that was really, really cool. That was really eye-opening to me that, hey, you could do this, right? You could genuinely do this and make this work, which is a really, really cool experience that I had when I was young. Anyways, right, we did that for a bit, and then COVID hit, and I graduated during COVID, and that kind of shut my whole video business down. I actually remember I had a really, really big project lined up with a guy who's probably a multimillionaire, but that fell through because COVID hit, and we just got locked down, and that kind of went. The following year, I moved away after the restrictions lifted, out to a different city, and I went to university there. And that was where everything really, really turned. As soon as I went, I broke up with my girlfriend. I then got diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety because I bought into the idea because both my roommates had it. And they're like, oh, you're depressed. And I was like, oh, am I? Like, let me go test. And because I felt sad, I talked about being sad. And the doctor's like, oh, you're sad. And we as humans have this idea that we always want to be right, which is why when somebody says they're sad, like they'll look for validation, confirmation bias, right, to validate the idea that they are right. Because nobody wants to say, oh, I'm sad. Be like, someone's like, no, you're not. And then, contradict themselves. Nobody wants to do it. And so what we do is I would go looking for sources that would validate the fact that I'm sad. And so my doctor, my therapist, my counselor, are like, oh yeah, you're sad, you're sad, you're sad. And as a matter of fact, the more I talked about being sad, the more sad I got. Right? And that's because you are just a byproduct of the things you feed yourself. And I'm not talking about physically, like what you eat, that's a part of it, but also like metaphorically, like the stuff you listen to, the people you talk to, the books you read, the shows you watch, like these are all things that fuel you and make you who you are. Like you are just a byproduct in the summation of everything that's happening in your life, the experience of the thoughts, the things you listen to, the food you eat, the people you talk to, the books you read, the shows you watch, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're just a sum of all those things. And so the more I started to talk about this stuff, the worse it got, and the more depressed I got. Next thing you know, I had eating disorder. I was losing a bunch of weight. I didn't even want to get out of bed. I would just stay in my bed the entire day. I'd be bawling my eyes out, calling my doctor, my therapist, and like it was horrible. Like genuinely, like fucking horrible. And something I never really experienced in my entire life. And that's when I came across Tate, and I watched some of his stuff, and at first, like anyone, I kind of got a bit triggered. Like, what the fuck? Like, why is this guy calling me out on the shit that, it's really hitting close to home? And then I realized to some degree he was right. And I started to listen. And I started to listen to what he had to say. And as the more I listened and listened and listened, the more it started to add up. And he's like, mental illness, like it's mental, it's in your head. It's just your thoughts. The only reason you're sad is because you've made yourself that sad. And I'm like, and then I asked myself, like, what am I sad about? I'm like, because I broke up with my girlfriend. Like that was the only conclusion I could come to, and it did not justify the months that I had spent just sitting in my bed doing nothing. I was like, well, that's kind of fucking weird. And then he went on to talk about the idea of how you should only hold beliefs that serve you. And I'm like, man, like depression, like here's the way I look at it is, let's say depression or not, whether it's real or not, I don't believe it's real. And here's the thing is, whether it's objectively real is a different conversation, because what's real is only what you make real. It's only what you believe to be real. So depression can be real for you if you believe in it. Like in that moment in time, depression was real for me because I believed in it. And here's the thing, whether depression is real or not, do I still have to get up every single day, go to school, go to the gym, work, and live my life? And I was like, well, yes. If I'm depressed or if I'm not depressed, I still have to wake up and do the same things. I was like, okay, so regardless of how I feel, I have to do the same things. Why am I buying into the idea of something that makes me feel worse? Why am I buying into the idea of this miracle imbalance in my brain that's making me feel worse despite the fact I have to do the same things? I was like, well, what the fuck? Like, man. And I decided to stop believing it was real. I was on like 5 different medication. I stopped taking any of the medication, and what happened was tremendous. It was incredible. I started to feed myself with thoughts of happiness. And within just a few short months, I was off all my medication. I had felt happier than I ever had felt before. I felt more in control of my life. I felt very pleasant to be alive. And I even had people come up to me and ask me, Stefan, how are you so energetic? How are you so passionate? How are you so happy all the time? I'm like, man, I have no time for bad days. Like what is there to be sad about in this world? I woke up today, there's food in my fridge, there's a roof over my head, there's blankets on my body, there's clothes in my closet, there's books on my bookshelf, there's a hat on my head, okay? There's breath in my lungs, there's blood in my heart, there's trees outside, I have a car downstairs. Like, what am I sad about? This life is incredible. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't still have bad moments, but I never let myself have bad days anymore. I make it a very conscious effort to myself to never have bad days. It's okay to have bad moments, things happen, but to have bad days, I don't believe in that anymore. And what happened is the second I stopped believing and buying into the ideas of things that could take away power from me, my life started to get better. Because when you buy into these ideas of things that make you worse, you start to believe them. And then as a byproduct, you get worse. And so what I started doing is saying, hey man, I'm only going to believe in things that give me power, things that give me control of my own life. So the fact that the reason I was sad is because it was my fault, not my girlfriend's, not this, not that, whatever the case, it was my fault. I was the one to blame. And guess what? When you blame yourself, you give yourself the power to change. Whatever you blame, you give the power to. So if you blame yourself, you have the power to change. If you blame somebody else, you now have given up the power. Because blame is a superpower. And so when you blame yourself, you now have the power. Anyways, as this went on, I tried a couple other businesses during this time. I tried drop shipping, it didn't work at all. I then went on to, I even worked for like a Netflix documentary and some other stuff and filming stuff, yada, yada, yada. Nothing really crazy, nothing really popped off. Anyways, I then picked up a job at the bank to go make some extra money, which is cool. I forget the exact numbers, but I think I did like 3 million in revenue brought in, or I guess assets brought into the company in like 6 months. And I believe that like, and I was part time. I believe that like a full time employee in 1 year should bring in like 2 million. I think so. I was outperforming everybody by a landslide. And when I asked for a raise, they said no. Interesting. I then went to talk to my hiring manager, and I asked him. I was like, "Hey man, like, if somebody came in here with no degree, would you hire him?" He's like, "Well, what's the context?" I was, "Well, he's worked at the bank, but he's pretty good. He has some sales skills. He's a good people person, and you can see his track record, but he has no education." He goes, "Who's the other guy?" I go, "Oh, he went to school for 5 years, but he's got no experience." He said, "Oh, I take the guy with experience every single day of the week." And I'm like, good to know. And that's when I first got a glimpse of how meaningless school really, really is for most professions. Not all, but most professions, right? And then I looked at some of the people that worked at the bank. I looked at some of the accreditations they had. I looked at, I got to know some of their salaries, and I just saw how sad they were. Not to mention the fact that you work at the bank, you see a lot of people's bank accounts, a lot of people that come in, and I got to see how financially unstable most people are. And I get to hear like, "Oh, I'm a lawyer." The fuck, you're a lawyer and you're this much in debt? Like, what the fuck? Like, that crazy, right? And I just, the more I looked into it, the more I was like, wow, like that, like this is insane. Like all of these people, right, who you think should have good jobs in debt. I'm like, what the fuck, right? Anyways, I tried a bunch of businesses. I couldn't find out something for myself. That was until I finally joined a mastermind, right? I know I'm skipping over some details here and there, but that's when I finally joined a mastermind. And in this mastermind, I was connected with other guys who were just like me, who were stupid, who were energetic, crazy, Tate fans, gym addicts, self-development fucking, addiction, yada, yada, yada. Yet I saw those guys in there make way more money than I'd ever thought was even possible in a year, and they're making it in a month. And I was like, man, like if these guys can do it, why can't I? I think this is a really powerful question, which is why can't I, or why not? And I was like, you know what? Like let me go see what's possible. And within a few short months, I scaled my first agency 10K per month. After that, or actually during the midway of that point, I dropped out of university. I quit. I just dropped out. My parents did not like this at all. And then I also ended up, I think like a week or two later, quitting my job at the bank. I handed in my letter of resignation, said, I'm done. And from that moment, I've never looked back. And I've been doing this entirely full time. And I think that it's easy to see the success on the top. Like, oh, look, he dropped out all this stuff. But I think what a lot of people forget is the hours and hours and hours of all the struggle, right? I kind of, brief over it in what I've just talked about here. But what people forget to see is how long I spent building a foundation to be able to scale my agency, right? And so like from the service level, it's like, oh, I scaled my agency 10K in like 3 months, give or take, right? But like in reality, it's like, well, I had started a couple different companies beforehand. I tried drop shipping. I learned a lot of marketing in that space. I had done reffing where I was like the management guy, so I learned a lot of managerial kind of principles there. Earlier on in my life, I had done a lot of filming, like I said, which I learned a lot about how to get clients, right, how to service them, etc. And so I had acquired a lot of these skills over the past couple of years. And what I finally needed was somebody to kind of break me free and show me what was possible and give me that belief and give me that undeniable conviction to allow me to scale. And that's, I think, one of the most crucial things that a lot of people miss out nowadays is nobody believes. In order to do anything, you have to believe to some extent, to some degree, right? You have to believe in yourself with an undoubted, with a almost delusional amount of conviction that you can make it work. And this is what a lot of people miss, is this undoubted conviction about themselves that they make it happen. And that's what the mastermind was so good at, was piecing that together, where I saw other people do what I was trying to do and be like, oh, I'm the same as them. And that gave me all the conviction and all the confidence I needed to go out there and make it work. But that's because I already did all the internal work beforehand. So that's my summarized version of my sort of matrixing. Obviously, there's a lot more little nitty-gritty things that happened. Like, for example, I was in marketing class, and I remember there was a teacher, the professor, and this lady were like discussing whether or not you should put the ad on the right or the left-hand side of the newspaper. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is this is not the place I need to be. Like, I was doing marketing at the time for real estate agents, and I was like, oh, what the fuck? Like, this is these people have it all backwards and have it all wrong. And that was like my sign to get out. And I just knew that the only person that was going to, make me get out was me. And I just had to put the work in. And the thing is, it's a lot easier said than done. You just, at the end of the day, it's up to you. Like, how bad do you want it? And I realized that the last thing I ever wanted to do was work a 9 to 5 in a corporate setting ever again. I want to have freedom and control over my time. And I made a promise to myself that I would never go back to that. And ever since then, I haven't. And I don't intend on doing so either. So yeah, that is inside my mind. Hope you enjoyed. If you have more questions, there's a couple links down below. Some to chat with me, some to apply to join Mastermind. Click the one that suits you best. And look forward to chatting.